Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with crime. This is a show where I try to educate real stories. Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. We have another exciting show planned for you tonight. We're going to talk about the federal criminal justice system tonight. And one of our themes is recidivism is a choice. I'm delighted to have in the studio with me Mr. Troy Bounds. And also I have co-hosting for me tonight is Miss Renita Antoine. And Renita is like the co-producer tonight. She actually found the talent for tonight, Troy Bounds, who's going to tell his story. He has a very good story, and it's a little different from the stories we've been hearing recently because he spent his time, his almost 15 years in the federal prison sentence system. So we'll be talking about his case and the difference between the federal system and the criminal justice system in Harris County, the state system. So we'll jump right into it, Troy. Thank you for being my guest tonight and being willing to share your story to explain to people how easy it is to get in trouble and hard it is to get out. So tell us about yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. My name is Troy Bounds. 43 years old, almost 44. Grew up in South Park, Houston, Texas. Raised by my grandmother. My mother had me young, and grandmother raised me. Grew up low-income housing, apartments in South Park, Wesley Square apartments. And pretty much grew up, you know how when we were young, we didn't know we were poor, you know. Had a pretty good childhood, wasn't a bad kid, you know. In fact, if you ask my grandmother, I was the best kid you could ever have. She just didn't know what I was doing out of her presence. But anyway.
Well, that's still good that she said good things about you.
Yes, ma'am. And I did okay. You know, like I said, good kid. Started going to church young, around 7 years old, 8 years old, right across the street from where I grew up. And so I had a pretty balanced life, if you will, versus like some people who grew up bad, doing bad, and young, you know, starting young doing bad. That wasn't really my testimony. And so I guess the story that got me here, right around high school, I kind of found my niche in the marching band. And that was it. The lights came on, and you couldn't tell me anything other than marching band. And so
that was at Jesse Jones?
Jesse H. Jones, Senior High School, yes, ma'am.
All righty,
and
South Park.
So there it was, you know, I'm like, man, this is me. Grandmother wouldn't let me play football. She was scared I was too skinny, I'd get hurt. Never was too good at basketball, and so I found my niche in the band. And so anyway, I was so focused on the band, I forgot I got to go to class. And so me and a friend of mine, we were kind of like the top guys, if you will, in the band. We made sure everybody learned their parts and made sure we made up the band dances and taught them to everybody. And we were kind of like our band director's go-to guys. And so now it was like we made it a burden that, man, we got to do this. And so, okay, well, I ain't going to go to class today. And anyway, long story short, I don't know if anybody remembers H. Ross Perot, House Bill, I think House Bill 72 or something like that. No pass, no play is what they called it. Mm-hmm. And so even though my grades were good, I'm flunking class because attendance. And so anyway, even though I'm doing great music, I'm failing school. And so I flunked, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'm cool. I'll just come back another year. And then they changed some things as far as your credits. When my mother was younger, when they graduated, they just had to have 18 or 20 credits and you graduate. When in my time, you had to have X number of credits per academic, like math, you had to have so many credits. English, you had to have so many credits. I didn't have enough math credits, couldn't graduate. And I was like, I'm not coming back to high school. And my smart plan was to drop out, get my GED, and join college with my classmates like nothing ever happened. Well, I got sidetracked because, remember, I grew up poor, and so now I'm starting to want to have things. Never necessarily wanted to do wrong to get them, but my reality is starting to slip now because my dream was to be a college band director. But by me dropping out of school and then by us being poor, didn't have anybody to pay for my college, wasn't as knowledgeable about, scholarships, grants, and different things. I'd heard about it, but what do I need to do to make it happen? I wasn't necessarily.
So nobody ever counseled you at the school, like in
No,
9th or
ma'am.
10th grade, about a career path? Even when in 11th grade, when you were a talented band leader, no one ever told you what you could do? Your counselor didn't tell you?
Not step by step, not details. Hey boy, you need to do this. You need to do that. I think they're much better nowadays with that than they were in my time. And I'm not saying that they didn't do it, but it certainly wasn't my experience. And so, long story short, I started selling drugs. And the way I got into it, because where I grew up, everybody loved and respected my grandmother. And so nobody would have allowed me or even enticed me to do anything wrong because my grandmother would kill them.
Okay.
Literally. And so I ended up kind of hanging out with other relatives of mine, and I never will forget this. A friend of mine, we were walking to school, and a drug dealer passed by in a car, nice clean car, rims, music, and I said to my friend, I said, man, that's a nice car. I want a car like that one day, but I'll never do anything wrong to do it. Well, anyway, months passed, and I started hanging out with my other relatives, and one of my relatives' boyfriend sold drugs, but I didn't know it. And the more I hung around him, I started to kind of realize what he did, and I was like, man, put me down. And he was like, no, no. And so I said, okay, well, the way to get to a man is to go through his woman. And so I talked to my relatives, I was like, hey, tell him to put me down. And she was like, oh, no, no way, And anyway, over time, just hanging around him and just gradually, I guess I wore him down. And finally he put me down. And so there we were, I was in the drug game. Now, I did keep my oath that I would drop out, get my GED, and join, get in college. But I'm selling drugs now. So I'm going to school, I'm selling drugs.
So you were going to college?
Yes, I was in school, but...
You got the GED?
Yes, got my GED. I'm going to Texas Southern University in the Ocean Soul Marching Band. I'm starting to see my dream come to fruition, but I got this going on over here. And so, long story short, I'm selling drugs, doing my thing, and I'm meeting people who are saying, man, you don't need this. You just need to focus on, school. You'll be fine, But I'm caught up. One thing about doing wrong, sin, and crime is that when you get in it, it's a lure that common people don't understand. For example, you work, you got your paycheck coming every 2 weeks, every month, or however often you get paid. You're making this money every day. When you need something, if I can't get it today, I'll make it tomorrow. And that becomes addictive. Mm-hmm. And so, sometimes you say, well, just stop. But just like with any other addiction, you can't just stop all the time. And so anyway, I'm trying.
Especially when you're 18 or 19 years old.
Yes, you're young. You don't even understand what you're doing.
Right.
Certainly you don't understand the lure of it all, and the psychological aspect of it all. So anyway, I'm caught up in the game, if you will. And so people are telling me, man, you need to kind of leave that alone. And so I'm trying to get out of the game. So I'm not doing as much, but I'm still kind of affiliated, if you will. And so, long story short, some guys that my uncle and I were dealing with, they get busted, and they tell on us.
Where do they get busted?
in Victoria, Texas.
Now, is that where they live in Victoria, or did they just happen to be doing some kind of shipment through Victoria? How did they get busted in Victoria?
They were from Houston, but I guess some kind of way they found out that we can make way more money doing the same thing, selling the same drugs, the same amount of drugs. We can make twice what we make in Houston in Victoria. Mm-hmm. And so they started to migrate to Victoria. And they bought the drugs from us, and then they would take them to Victoria and sell them. Now, we had nothing to do with them outside of the buyer-seller relationship that we had with them. And so they get busted down there, and rather than just taking their charge, you do the crime, do the time, the federal system, which is who indicted us, and that's why we went to prison, they have a system where they reward snitches, right or wrong. That's what they do. And they told on us, gave them our names, and long story short, they indicted us. And we didn't know that the federal system operated that way. We didn't feel like you can destroy my life with what somebody is saying, informant testimony. And so we wanted to go to trial.
Let me just stop you there so our listeners have some background. So the people y'all were selling to were selling in Victoria. They obviously get busted, unbeknownst to you. Mm-hmm. They start snitching, because the federal system does reward snitches, mm-hmm. and it gets caught up under the umbrella of conspiracy. So like in the state system, if you get caught selling drugs, you usually get caught with the drugs on you, or the officer sees it. So you're going to either be in possession of it or delivering it, or you're in possession of so much it must be more than a usable quantity, so they presume that you're possessing it with intent to distribute. But when you get to the federal system and conspiracy, they don't have to catch you with the drugs, either buying it or selling it. You can be a part of aiding or abetting people in getting it and distributing it. It can be, you can play like a small role in it, and if they feel like you have the same culpable mental state or the same guilty mind as to, you might just be doing a little bitty step in the whole process to make it work. You might not even know the other people in the conspiracy, as long as you know one.
Yes,
you just have to know one person. And so it's a different thing. So it is kind of counterintuitive that they could convict you, because that's not the way it's normally done in the everyday Harris County State Court, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so one of the challenges, and I want you to finish telling your story, but as he tells it, I'm going to whine about some of my challenges as a criminal defense lawyer, and kind of see what happened in his situation and find out how it would differ from some of the situations that I encounter. So continue to tell us. So you actually get indicted for conspiracy.
Yes, ma'am.
In Corpus Christi, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, why is it Corpus Christi instead of Victoria?
The guys, when they migrated to Victoria, I guess they found out that they could even do more in Corpus Christi, and so they actually used to go to Victoria and Corpus Christi, and they ended up getting in a shootout with some guys down there, and one of the guys was killed, and this is kind of what brought the heat, if you will, the street terminology for, I guess, the law enforcement getting involved, and so that's what drew the feds in, because Victoria nor Corpus is obviously as big as Houston, and so the local law enforcement didn't have the manpower, if you will, to deal with what was termed then the crack epidemic, and so they called the feds in, and so the feds, even though these are smaller towns, the feds came in. This is what even made the case federal, and so now that the feds are investigating the case and pursuing these guys, of course, the mentality is, well, who did you get the drugs from? We want the big guy, which is a lie, but we'll get to that later. And so they started.
And this is 1994, right?
Yes, ma'am.
1994.
Yes, ma'am. And so they're acting like they want the big guys, and so give us names. And so they're telling them names. They told them our names, but they gave them many names,
including the big guys.
The big guys, way bigger than us. And but for some reason, they pursued us, and we got indicted April 19th, 1994. We were in jail. They let us out on bond, stayed out on bond. We started going to trial in October.
Now, let me ask you this. Now, you said you had a court-appointed lawyer.
Yes, ma'am.
So it was a court-appointed lawyer out of Corpus.
Yes.
So you weren't selling enough drugs to have the money to pay for your own lawyer?
Just foolish in the drug game, because we're taught to put money aside for stuff like that. But again, the mentality is, I'll make it up tomorrow. I'll make it up next week. You know, I want to buy this new car. You know,
So
I want to buy this.
You spending it as fast as you're making it.
Yes, but pretty much. You know.
But your uncle hired a lawyer.
Right. He was making money illegally, but he also had a legitimate business going on.
Okay.
So he had money, not rich, but he was okay. He was well off, and he hired the lead attorney on the case. Paid him $50,000 actually, and
Back in 1994, that's good.
yes, and everybody, it was 3 of us, and the other 2 we had court-appointed attorneys.
Okay.
Because we weren't selling drugs to be millionaires, Nino Brown status, just basically in our little warped mentality, just want to live nice. Because again, remember, now I'm really just trying to go to college.
Right.
And in my, I guess, street ignorance, if you will, I'm just paying my way through college. You know?
Right, right.
Yes, so anyway, we're going to trial. Remember, our mentality is...
Now, did your lawyer ever talk to you about taking a plea?
The only time a plea became an option was toward the end. And when I say end, I mean the time that it took from, we were supposed to go to trial in September. We wanted to change the venue because at the time we're commuting from Houston to Corpus Christi, which is like a 5-hour turnaround. And it was too expensive, plus the time wouldn't allow us to do it. And so we wanted to change it. Plus, we'd never been to these places. Why are we being tried in these places? And so we tried to get a change of venue to Houston. Plus, the lead attorney, Kent Schaefer, was out of Houston.
Right.
And so the judge said, well, no, we're not going to Houston. And I kind of agree. I see your point with Corpus. Let's just have it in Victoria, which is where this particular conspiracy started. And I think the people of Victoria deserve the opportunity to hear this case. And he ended up having it in between, which helped us out a lot because we were able to commute. It's only 2 hours from Houston to Victoria, and we were able to drive to trial and then come back home all in the same day. Tiresome, but we were able to do it. And so when the plea came up, they offered the other guy 5 years, they offered me 7 years, and they offered my uncle 10 years. But you got to understand, we were all first offenders. We'd never been in trouble, never been arrested for a traffic ticket or anything, never been in any kind of trouble. So you tell me 7 years, my exact words were, my life is going to be destroyed anyway. Mm-hmm. I may as well go to trial. And the reason I say they offered it at the last minute, from the beginning, them knowing how the feds operate versus us being ignorant to any type of law, we had heard about state, but we've never been in trouble. And that was one of the things, being ignorant to understanding the law, understanding the systems and how they operate, state, federal, and all of it. In the state court, you have to have tangible evidence. In the feds,
you don't.
You don't.
And that's a big difference, and that's a really good way of putting it, because when I do have federal clients, like I have a couple of federal clients now, and one of them is real, I mean, I've been dealing with him a lot. He's lucky enough to be here at the Federal Detention Center downtown, so he's easy to get to, versus being at the GEO way out in Conroe. And I have another client that's in Karn City, which is way out. I mean, that's like an hour outside of San Antonio, but he's cool. But the one I have here, he just has a real bad understanding. He's been to prison a lot of times, state prison a lot of times, but has an awful understanding. And what I can't make him understand is you have one of two choices. You're either going to plead or go to trial. And the longer we mess around and not plead, the more your points are going up.
Yes.
And I have explained it to him ad nauseam. So what's interesting to me is that when we talked before we got on the air, you said I was ignorant to the system. I didn't understand. If my lawyer had said what would have made you plead? Tell me what you said.
If he had told us the feds don't need evidence, they can, this informant testimony or snitch testimony is enough to convict you.
But you had a woman lawyer. Did you trust her? She was appointed, so you didn't trust her.
I didn't trust either one of them.
And see, that's another problem I find, is that clients don't trust us, whether we're appointed or whether we're retained. You just don't believe what they're saying. So the interesting thing is this: you hire a lawyer for their wisdom, their years of experience. That's what makes our fees higher. An inexperienced lawyer is going to be cheaper than an experienced lawyer. If I've had over 100 trials, which I have, over about 100 appeals, federal and state trials, then obviously I can command, and I'm board certified in criminal law, I can command more money than a lawyer that's been out of law school 3 or 4 years, that's never gone to trial, and all of their cases are pleas, because that means they've never bucked the system. So they just, they plea lawyers basically. So obviously, but people don't see it that way. So it's unless you've really researched it before you get a lawyer. There are people in society who've never been in trouble, and they do see that, but they're generally people whose children are in trouble, people who are in the business world who understand, because they're in business, that the longer you're in a business, the more you're going to command in terms of fees, and the more knowledgeable you are. I mean, if you worked at an oil company for 20 years, you know that you're a better employee than somebody who's been working there 1 year. So when you deal with people like that are hiring you maybe for their kids or for their relatives, they understand what experience is worth, in any career. But when I think that's one of the problems when you deal with people in the drug game or any game, and they're pretty new to it, in terms of getting in trouble. They don't trust people because they don't understand experience. They don't understand the value of someone saying, look, no, I've had 100 trials. I don't mind going to trial, but I'm really trying to explain this to you. You better try to take this time right now because it's not like we can negotiate. You can't really negotiate with the feds. The feds are under the speedy trial doctrine. So when they indict you, they have the evidence. It's not like state. So on the day you go to court for your arraignment, is the day you get your trial date. And it's going to be within 75 days.
Yes, ma'am.
And so your lawyer, almost always, every lawyer in federal court has to ask for a continuance because it's almost not even enough time to deal with your regular schedule and going through all the evidence. Because in like a couple of the current federal cases I have now, they might have been doing the investigation for 3 or 4 years. So it's 3 or 4 years of telephone tapes, cell phone towers, just all kind of evidence that they've put, because it's conspiracy, so they've put all these pieces together on all these different people. So, and you have to hurry up and make that decision. You can't play around. And as you know, the federal system is one that, although you said they offered you time, generally you really don't know how much time people are going to get because it's that sentencing guideline. So you can guesstimate it. But you really don't know what it is. It's easier to calculate for first offenders. But when you deal with people who've been to prison 3 or 4 times, it's harder because then they come on a career offender status. And so it's really hard to tell about the points, but you want them to get the acceptance of responsibility. You want them to get any 5K reduction they have, which is talking. The only way you can get those points down on the sentencing guideline is to give evidence on someone else. So you're right, the federal system is actually geared towards snitching.
Oh, no doubt about it. It's understood. It wouldn't function without it.
It wouldn't function without it.
And it's actually illegal according to the way the law is written, but
it's what they do. And one of the things that's the most gangster about the federal system is that not only do you snitch, because I've been going to trial when other people snitched, my clients didn't, and say, for example, Medicare fraud, let's get out of drugs, and the feds actually write the script for them to say. So they might say, my client did something that they absolutely did not do, and they know they absolutely did not do it, but the feds actually can tell people to lie, and if they don't lie and say what the feds say, then they're not going to get the point reduction. And that's the most gangster thing about the federal system.
Yes, ma'am.
The federal agents get to write the script. If you testify. So whoever testified against you, they're going to mix the truth with whatever that federal agent says, because a part of your snitch agreement is that you have to testify and testify truthfully according to what we want you to say, basically, or we will withhold the reduction.
Yes, ma'am. Until I experienced it myself.
You can't, and it's hard to explain that to someone. I try to tell my clients, look, and if they say, well, what did I pay you for? You paid me to guide you through this system. You paid me to come visit you, to explain the law to you, explain your choices to you in an intelligent fashion. So if you stop fighting me about it, I only have one that's fighting me. Most people, if they hire you, if they pay you, they don't fight you. I have one in particular that's fighting me and trying to tell me his job because he's now he's reading a book called Busted by the Feds, so he thinks he knows everything. And I'm sure you read that when you were in prison.
No, ma'am.
Oh, you never did, but he thinks he knows everything. It's about this thick, and it talks about all of the circuits, all of the whole United States. And if you were in there a long time, like I know, you were, California might be more lenient than New Jersey.
The circuits.
And see, we're in the worst circuit. The Fifth
different
Circuit,
subjects.
Different circuit. I mean, our Fifth Circuit is one of the most punishment circuits there is. And so, and our judges are some of the toughest.
Yeah.
But let's get back to your trial. So I'm sorry I had to go off on that tangent. But the federal system is just, it's a cold system.
Yes, it is.
It's a cold system.
Yes, it is. And I didn't really know how cold until I was in the system. And now I'm seeing guys come in behind me. Because initially going through what I went through, because they tried to give me life in prison without parole, according to...
On your first offense,
yes,
no priors.
First offense, life in prison without parole.
And how old were you?
I was 25 years old.
Just 25 years old.
Blew my mind. And of
even
course,
the time you got, I know you fainted. Because when he got convicted and he got sentenced and he got 235 months. And the feds do it in terms of months.
Right.
So you hear those big months, but you just hope when you divide that by 12, that's not that long.
That's right.
But it's scary. So basically he got 19 years on his first offense without being caught with drugs. Just what was the evidence against you in the trial?
Informant testimony.
I mean, what did the informant say?
We used to buy drugs and we bought them from him and him.
That's all they had to say.
That's it.
Wow.
No drugs, no proof of it. Could have been lying. So they get to say the quantity, because even though you're getting sentenced on quantity. So was it 20 kilos? Was it 5 kilos? Because they have a lot of times they don't have no dope, right? I mean, there's some original. I mean, there might be some original dope.
This is what they play on. It wasn't just one person saying it.
Right.
All of the guys, the whole little clique.
They write the script.
Exactly. The whole clique, you got 5 guys, let's just say. And these 5 guys say that each of them bought drugs from you. So now why are you telling the truth and all 5 of these guys are lying? And why did they pick you? You know what I mean?
And those 5 guys have pled guilty.
Yes.
So in front of the jury's face is, I'm guilty and I'm just here to tell the truth.
Yes.
I'm not coming to get anything. I'm just here to tell the truth.
Right.
And he had one of the best lawyers there is on cross-examination. He teaches us cross-examination, so I'm not disparaging Ken Schaefer at all. He's an excellent lawyer. But the point is, the system is colder than how cold your lawyer is.
Oh, no doubt about it.
Because the jury's sitting there saying, it's 5 people here that have said, I did it, and I did it with him, and I took my time, but he won't take his time. So what is the jury going to do?
They're going to go with those 5 people.
And even though the lawyer's going to cross-examine them on, you have a plea agreement. They're going to show the snitch the plea agreement. They're going to say, you're going to get this if you do it. I mean, I'm a cold cross-examiner too, okay? Trust me. I get in your face. I'm going to talk about every reason, all your motivation for lying, everything dirty and low down that you've ever done. But that jury does not care.
Doesn't mean
a federal jury will convict you based on the snitch's testimony, without anything else.
The jurors, go ahead.
Did you have the opportunity to testify?
Yes, I was the only...
Hold on just a second. We have a call that's been holding. Caller, if you're still there, please speak to us.
Yes, I'm here. How you doing, Ms. Vivian Kenny?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Welcome back. I missed you for the past couple of weeks.
Thank you.
You looking very beautiful tonight, and you too, Renita.
Thank you.
And Troy, I guess according to my calculation, you've been out about 5 years now. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
5 or 6 years?
Yes, sir. August will be 5.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. What kind of time will you face? I mean, what's the minimum you could have got? What's the maximum you could have got?
Well, you know, the feds sentence you to the sentencing guidelines. Basically, they sentence you according to your drug amounts. So if you're referring to what they charged me with, you know, it's not like the state where you got 5 to 40 or 10 to life. You basically get sentenced. If you have 5 kilograms, your sentence is within a small little range. Like my guideline range, according to the drug amounts, was 235 months up to like 295 months, which is like 19 years, 7 months, up to like 21, 22 years, give or take. And basically that was my range. Now, if you're referring to what did they offer me, I was sharing with Ms. King that they offered me 7 years, but it was like right before trial. So now I'm not getting as many points off as I would have had I pled guilty in the very beginning. But again, like I said earlier, I've never been in trouble in my life. 7 years to me is my whole life. So I'd rather take my chance at trial, not understanding that they're going to try to give me life in prison. I'm still thinking my first offense, I'm not going to get that much time.
Okay. Did you think if you'd had a high-profile law, you think you could have beat the case, or you think you could have got lesser time, or?
No, sir. We had the biggest attorney in Houston, one of the biggest attorneys in Houston at the time.
He was one of the biggest attorneys at the time.
Yeah, he
it still is.
Yeah. in the feds, I don't care who you have.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. See, it doesn't matter.
You can have,
and that's the misnomer people have, is they think if the more money they spend, the better it's going to be. You got to spend good money and a lot of money to get a good lawyer. But that lawyer is guiding you through the process. But remember, the client has to make the final decision.
Just
whether
right.
you go to trial, what you're paying for is your lawyer to investigate,
right.
Investigate the facts and tell you, yeah, I think if we go to trial, they're going to get us. So we better go ahead and cop a plea.
Exactly.
And so that's what you're paying somebody to do, is to advise you or to say, I investigated it, and I don't think they can prove this beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
But then here comes the problem. You have to be mature enough and trusting in your lawyer enough to take their counsel.
Right.
When they come and talk to you, you can't say, because people already have their minds made up, and people think that I hire a lawyer to beat the case. You hire the lawyer for the time. It's
right.
just like building a building. You're hiring all the workers to build the building. Because they stop halfway through doesn't mean you don't pay them, because they didn't finish, or if because a hurricane blows it down before they can finish. But that's the way people treat us in the criminal system. It's like, well, I paid you all this money. You're supposed to beat the case. No, I'm working. I'm working every day on your case. I'm trying to figure out so I can counsel you, because the system is not made to beat. See,
no.
It's not designed to beat. It's only designed to try to free innocent people.
Right.
And it's not designed for guilty people to go free.
Right.
And that's the part that's hard. That's the hard pill to swallow, don't you think?
Yes, but to me,
and even to understand what you're guilty of, because like I said, conspiracy in the federal system is a hard concept.
It's a gimmick, and it's abused. They abuse conspiracy.
Yes, it's abused.
It's intended. Its true intent is good, but they abuse it, and they allow you to have test. There's no other crime.
There's no check and balance
on what people
are saying.
Crime in law that you can do what they do with the conspiracy law, in particular when it comes to drugs, and I hate to make it be, because it's really race neutral. But
you're going to hang up and call us back if you have another question, Tracy, okay?
It's really race neutral. It's just unfortunate that during this so-called war on drugs, it negatively affected the young African-American male. But it really applies across the board. But to show you how ironic the system is, and I don't want to get off focus, but when they were doing this crack powder disparity, and everybody was saying, oh, that's wrong. How can you, if you're trying to stop
If you're
crack,
doing it based on weight, it shouldn't matter. But if it was crack, it was what?
If it's crack, and you're saying that crack is more addictive than powder, which is a lie, it was medically proven, but that's what they were perpetuating at the time. They were showing the crack baby commercials, and this is your brain, and this is your brain on drugs, and they were perpetuating all of this. And so now we come up with this, we want to, when it became a so-called epidemic, now we want to get tough on crime, which is fine, but be fair. If you have a problem with crack, you can't have crack without powder.
Right.
So if you're trying to get rid of crack, if you get rid of powder, then you get rid of all of it, but it's going to affect more white young males than crack. So what they did, and this proves that it was racist intent, because they put it toward crack and crack alone. But now, years later, when, what was that drug, methamphetamine became big among young white males, they enhanced the time and made it more harsh, and it only lasted 2 years. They changed it just that fast, because a lot of young white men, and again, I don't like to play the race card, but the truth is the truth. And so they changed it immediately, and it wasn't until 12 years later that they started to, take the pressure off of this crack powder thing. But guys did 15, 20, 25 years. I got a friend still in prison now, going 20-some years, and again,
so let's talk about this. So you're saying this because you were adversely affected because there was a sentencing issue of crack, right?
Yes.
Now, did that come up in the trial, that it was crack, or did they know the form in which, was there any drugs at y'all's trial? Did they bring some drugs?
No, ma'am.
That's what's even colder. If you go to a trial in state court for delivery or of dope, or for possession of dope, they got to bring the dope.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They got to bring the dope to court. It's got to be in a police officer's lockbox. The cold thing about conspiracy is that was just, it's all about he said, she said.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have no dope at all. So if the guy said that he sold 20 kilos, he's going to be sentenced on that guideline way up here with 20 kilos.
Yes,
and it might have only been in 5 cells. It could have been just 1 kilo as a total.
Right.
But it's whatever they say. And remember, because I believe, because police officers keep statistics and things like that, they always make it be more.
Exactly.
And everybody's going to have the same story. It's rehearsed. I had never seen anything so dishonest as that federal system. I mean, it's only as honest as the FBI agent or the DEA agent is.
Do you know the worst thing about it? This snitch informant testimony and the way the feds do this
it's
conspiracy
cold.
thing. I was in prison for 14 years.
On your first offense?
First offense, never been in trouble in my life. I've seen guys walk around the track in prison, get in little private corners. For example, let's say me. I'm going to snitch. I'm going to snitch on Renita. But you don't know Renita.
Right.
I know Renita.
Right.
But you got a lot of time.
Right.
I've befriended you in prison.
Right.
You and I get together, and I tell you everything I know about Renita.
Right.
I'm going to talk to the prosecutor in my case because they want Renita.
Right.
So they'll do anything to get illegal or whatever. And I tell you everything I know about Renita, and I can talk to the prosecutor, get your name on the bill, the snitch bill, and they'll write you up for your downward departures, 5K1s, and all of that. And then you and I will go to trial. If she fights the case, we'll go to trial, and you will testify, like you say, coerced, everything that I told you about Renita. And if the jury, and 9.9 times out of 10, they're going to believe our story, because why would we lie on her?
Yeah,
and
why
why
would
would
we
the
do
feds
that?
even bring her here if she's not guilty? The jurors told us this in, what is it, voir dire or voir dire? How do you pronounce it?
Right.
Voir dire. They told us he wouldn't be here if he hadn't done something.
Right. That's what they say.
And our attorneys tried to have them stricken because of that. But the judge was like, well, if that's the case, I'll strike everybody, because everybody probably has that mentality, that perception.
And I think that's another problem with the racial issue, because I've had an FBI agent one time tell me when they were doing big on Medicare fraud about 5 years ago, and they really went after Nigerians. I was dealing with an American nurse, but she was black African-American nurse, and he said, well, you need to just, but she worked for a Nigerian company, home health care company. You need to pass your card out to the Nigerian community, because we're running a program to find out all home health care owners with Nigerian surnames. We're targeting them. He told me that. So you need to pass your name out in that community. So that's what's so cold, is that when you hear of a judge like the Fifth Circuit judge in New Orleans, Judge Jones, Edith Jones, they made a complaint because she said African Americans and Hispanics are more violent and more predisposed to violent crimes and drugs. I can almost see why a judge might feel that way, especially a federal judge, is because all they see is a bunch of African American and Hispanic men. So they have no clue in their minds that officers are specifically targeting those people. Because as working for this nurse in the home health care, working to defend her, she told me she worked for 5 different home health care companies at the same time. One, she might have 3 patients. One, she might have 2 patients. And they just go in and follow a plan of care and follow whatever the nurse and doctors are telling them to do in terms of uncontrollable diabetes, or someone might have just gotten out of the hospital with some type of surgery. She's just going in to administer medicine and leaving, okay, checking on them and leaving. And if they're doing badly, then she calls the doctor to follow up. And that's supposed to be one of the ways to actually reduce health care by sending an LVN in to do the plan. But they get in trouble for paying them kickbacks to the nurses. There is an exception in the law that allows that. She said every industry pays bonuses if we refer them patients, because the nurses are out there in the field, so they know if you're in trouble, say your grandmother is ill, and I'm her nurse, and her buddy is ill, and they say, well, ooh, I got a nice nurse, and someone's in the hospital, and they say, oh, what company you work for? I want to send you over to that company, because I got a friend that's about to be released, and she's going to need a home health care nurse. The law says under the safe harbor, you can do that. You can refer, it's the company, you're not getting anything for it. But the companies will pay bonuses. She said all the white companies did that. But the Nigerians are the only ones. And she's in prison now because of that. And all she was doing was referring people for legitimate concerns, because what the owners might do is mix some legitimate concerns with some fake concerns. But how does the nurse know that? You see what I'm saying? Because they're the ones cooking the books. They're the ones in the office. She's just out there doing the assignments that they're telling them to do. So, you know, I'm saying all that to say people are targeted. Groups are targeted because they're poor.
Yes.
You know, like it would be hard to get a 25-year-old college student that's a white guy who's selling drugs because his parents are going to spend every dime they got and family's going to find some money to hire a lawyer. You had a court-appointed lawyer. You know, you see what I'm saying?
Right.
It's easier. Plus, the perception that black people sell dope is easier. It's harder to believe a young white kid might be selling dope.
Perception
or
is
doing
bigger
dope.
than the rest of it.
The perception is the biggest thing. So I
Yes.
think officers target the easiest target. And black people are
Right.
easier because they already know that a system wants to punish us.
Right.
Where it's hard to go after the meth guys or the white guys that's selling the cocaine because the system is just not going to want to see a 25-year-old handsome white guy selling dope. They're not going to do it. So the cops know that's a harder person to get a conviction with.
Exactly.
And so they target us
Plus, they're more likely to have the resources to fight. Jurors are more likely to, you know,
see them and say, "Oh, that looks like my
Yes.
son," or "That looks like one of my son's friends." And so, I mean, it's not good and it's not right that black kids are doing it. But the moral to the story should be even more so: don't do it because your butt is going to get caught first. I mean, you're going to be the first one targeted. You can't. I had to tell my daughter that when she was at Lamar High School. When they were in the 9th grade, this 14-year-old kid would always get arrested. He was always doing dope. I said, but he lives in River Oaks. You can't do what he does because they let him go every day. I said, if you have a joint or you driving around at 14, you're going to jail. They're not going to take you home. And so, and everybody will just say you just an awful person. I said, no one will ever believe it. And that's almost the hardest part about integration when black kids see white kids doing the same thing, but the black kids are the ones that go to jail. That's hard.
We used to mentor the kids. They brought kids into the prisons for us to talk to them. And one of the main things we would tell them is, you know, trouble is easy to get into, but it's hard to get out of. You know, it sounds, you know, cool for me to say, oh, yeah, they targeted us, the black community or whatever. But the bottom line is we were doing wrong.
You're doing wrong.
So I totally accept that. But don't tell me that you're going to give me a 20-year sentence for crack. And I never sold crack a day in my life. I never sold a pebble of cocaine, or rock, or crack. I only dealt with powder. But you're giving me 12 additional years. My sentence would have been 8 years, according to the drug amounts that they sentenced me to, had it been powder. And
anything you ever sold was powder. You never sold crack.
Never sold crack.
So that's where the sentencing guidelines had that racial element into it. How did the cops put crack into it? Tell us that.
The snitches would buy the powder from us, rock it or turn it to crack, take it and sell it. So what the court said was they made us be the kingpins.
But how can you foresee what somebody's going to use your drugs for? You just sell it to them. They got the money.
You can't.
I mean, they might snort it all themselves.
You can't. And the irony is, we don't care. Once you pay me, you can flush it down the commode.
Right.
I wouldn't care. I got my money.
Right.
But the system acknowledges that. When I say system, the law acknowledges that. You can look in the law books, the sentencing guidelines and everything that governs the law.
So that's why they had to tell the snitches, they had to talk about that crack, because that just seems like that was too far. They had to have those snitches there to testify to say that they bought powder and turned it into crack.
Whenever the prosecution would examine a witness or cross-examine a witness, they would always say, when they finish, well, how was the cocaine when you bought it from my uncle and myself? And they would say it was powder. And they would make sure that, well, what did you do with it after you bought it from him? Oh, I rocked it up. Because
they got to have that in the evidence.
During the time of them starting their investigation, that would have been enough to hold me accountable for them turning it into crack. But the guidelines changed. Now the law says, yes, it's enough for you to know, but you also have to be in agreement that it be done.
That has to be part of the conspiracy.
Yes.
And that was not a part of the conspiracy.
It was not a part of the conspiracy.
Your conspiracy was only to sell.
Yes.
And to receive the money.
Yes.
It wasn't to what they were going to do with it afterwards.
Right. They made us be one big drug organization.
Right.
And it was just me and my uncle.
Right.
It was just us two.
Right.
You know, but I wanted to say this. You made a comment earlier that I think people need to know. You know, of course, in my mind, now I accept responsibility for my actions. But at the time, you know, I hated the guys that snitched on me, wanted to kill them, you know.
Right.
But once I got in the system and I saw how wrong they do people,
Right.
how dirty the feds play,
Ooh, they're dirty.
they will lock your grandmother, your
Ooh,
mama, your
everybody.
wife, your child. They'll lock anybody
Your lawyer,
up,
if they can.
whether or not they were involved or not.
Right.
To put pressure on them to tell on you, to put pressure on you to tell on everybody else.
And it's hard to explain that to people how dirty the feds are.
Oh, they dirty.
And the reason why they
They're
get to be dirty, because remember, the federal judges are appointed for life.
Exactly.
So and it
Exactly.
ain't nothing you can do about it.
Nothing.
It's nothing you can do about it. It's not like you can change judges, you know. And it's just, you know, it's a cold
and
system.
you can play gangster all you want to. I mean, I don't believe in snitching. I never will. I don't condone it under any circumstances, because the bottom line, we're taught on the streets doing wrong. Don't involve your people in it, and you don't have to worry about, you know, them getting caught up.
Right.
Don't have your woman involved.
Right.
Don't have your mother, whoever.
Right. Don't tell them.
Right. Don't have them in your business. You don't have to worry about that. But we all don't do that.
Right.
And so I've seen them take people's grandmothers and lock them up. Mamas, pregnant wives.
Oh, they don't care.
They
and
don't
they all
care.
what? They look the same, black and Hispanic.
Yes, and you can say what you want to say, but until your grandmother is locked up,
I know that's right.
until they got your mama,
And that you know knew nothing
who's
about
already
what's going on.
old and ill,
Right.
don't tell me what you will or won't do.
I know that's right.
You can talk about snitches all you want to. And I've seen them, and God bless me that while I was incarcerated, I wanted to do two things. I grew up in church, and so I had to, you know, turn my life back over and live righteously according to what I believe. And the second thing I had to do, I had to learn the law, because what they did to me, they were able to do it because I didn't know the law.
Right.
And I swore to myself.
And when people tried to tell you the law, you weren't listening, because you couldn't understand that. And you know, and maybe your court-appointed lawyer didn't have enough knowledge, but certainly your uncle's lawyer did.
Right.
And so, but you're not really asking those questions, because you're just
Right.
because man's desire is to be free. This is what I find.
Yes.
And because man's desire is to be free, all you're thinking about, there's got to be a way around this. There's got to be a
And
way
that's
around this.
that's what
There's
I'm
got to be
paying
a
you
way
for.
around this. There's
That's
got
what
to
I'm
be a way
paying you
around
for.
this. There's got to be a way
Yes.
around this. And so you're constantly saying, sweetheart, no, there's not. I've investigated. I've sat there for 10 hours and listened to all those doggone tapes. I've listened to this, and when we put these pieces together, it ain't gonna be good for you. So you got to make that decision. Well, no, you got to ask the judge one more time. Those judges don't care about you. I have a client I keep trying to say, you got one of the worst judges in the system. She doesn't care about you. She's going to try to figure out how to upward depart. Come on, baby.
But
This is killing you.
Do you see how real you just broke that down?
Yeah.
Our attorneys didn't come at us like that.
Oh, I do. I do.
They didn't come at us
I'll
like that.
cry. I mean, I will cry real tears. I mean, I'm like, baby, I don't, look, I'm a cold lawyer. I'll try your case all day long. You'll be so proud. You'll be wanting to give me an Academy Award when I finish. But your butt still might be going to jail.
Yes.
Especially in the federal system. I can make a better assessment in the state system, because the state system, we get to do our own voir dire. When you get to do your own voir dire, you get at least in that hour, 2 hours, you get a feeling of a little bit about the people. In the federal system, the judges do the voir dire. They might let the lawyer do a little cleanup question, but they do the basic voir dire.
Right.
And so the jury is beholden to the judge. And in federal court, judges can ask questions.
Right.
So if they don't like the way the stuff is going, like if the defense is winning, the judge will all of a sudden start asking the questions that the damn prosecutor didn't ask.
Yes.
They'll turn around and start taking over the damn case for the prosecutors.
Yes.
In state court, they can't do that.
Right.
But in the federal court, they'll turn around and start helping.
Right.
Let's take a call. Let's take a quick call.
Hi, I'll be on.
Turn your volume down, and please, we'd like to hear your comment.
Hello, how are you, Ms. Vivian King?
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. I am actually a niece of Troy Bounds. Hey, Uncle Troy, this is Kimmy.
Hey, baby, how you doing?
You don't have that volume down. Turn that volume off and talk in the receiver, because we're listening to your echo. We don't have time to listen to your echo.
Okay, yes, ma'am. First of all, I wanted to say I think it's a great thing that you're doing today, because whether we're pulling the race card or not, a lot of young males and females are uneducated about this matter. When these events took place, I was a young girl and didn't understand. Excuse me for trembling, because it brings back so many memories. But even when you guys were gone, we became educated on things that we had no knowing about ever. We didn't understand why you were there. But when we started to learn, do you remember when we came to Victoria and all of us were pregnant women and they tried you guys again and had you in shackles, knowing the men and how great you guys were? We didn't understand how they could even treat you like slave dogs.
Right.
Again, never been in trouble in your life. So, again, I want to say that this is positive. It's also wonderful how you and Uncle can give back just with what you've been through, a true testimony. And even though you guys did wrong, you did go through what you had to go through. God brought you out of it. Hallelujah. It's miraculous. And it is just a wonderful thing that you're doing right now. Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Vivian, too.
Okay, thank you so much for calling in, sweetheart. I appreciate you, okay?
Y'all have a good one. I'm watching.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, that's supposed to be the purpose, Kimmy. Thank you for that comment. The reason why I, for a year and a half, come here every Wednesday, I begged every friend, every person I know, every client I know, and Renita got Troy to come in. Thank you. Because, you know, we always talk about no one cares. No one tries to educate people. So I spend my time on Wednesdays doing this on Comcast and Uverse and online. And then later I take them and I get another web guide to reformat them and put them up on YouTube. I pay for that too. So and it's because if nothing else, I want to leave a legacy of education,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
that you can go to a bank of places and say, listen to. I think I got 53 of them on YouTube right now, and I think I have about 10 I need to put on, about different topics: sexual assault, aggravated robbery. We've talked about everything.
Yeah.
Just about everything.
Prostitution.
Murder. So people understand. Let's take one more call. Thank you for calling. Turn your volume down and talk into the receiver, please. Hello? Hello?
I think they-
Uh-oh, they hung up on me. Sorry.
Oh,
All
that's
right, so we got about, man, we went fast today. We have about 9 minutes. So let's talk about, okay, so you're out, your uncle's out, and the good news is what? 3 weeks after you got out, what happened?
Well, I was determined. You know, when I came home, I'd been gone so long.
Oh, I'm sorry. We got another call. Let's try. Is there another call? Thank you. Turn your volume down and talk into the receiver. Thank you.
Hi, this is Karen Vera, and I've been listening to your broadcast, and I wanted to ask the question, when you are looking for a criminal lawyer, what are the first questions you should ask to get a lawyer that's going to be upfront and honest like you are, Ms. King?
I'm going to let you answer that.
From hindsight, I think what people need to understand about lawyers is you have to make your lawyer work for you, just like you would your doctor. Your doctor, you think that he knows everything. He really goes off of what you tell him, and then he uses his experience to try to get you well. Well, a lawyer is similar in that you know whether you're guilty, you know whether you're innocent. And so what you need your attorney to do is, you know, first of all, looking back on it, we should have been 100% truthful with our attorneys.
And that is such a good point.
That's
I'm so
the only
glad
way
you said that, because they never tell us the truth.
Right, that's the only way that they can help you.
And we go in the wrong direction. Our clients send us off on rabbit trails all the time saying that, no, I didn't do this, he did this. And so you're chasing that and we're wasting time.
Right,
we're wasting
right.
time.
And so that's the first thing you need to do. The second thing you need to do, and I tell guys, if you're going to do something wrong, you need to know the law regarding what you're doing wrong. Otherwise, you're never going to get 100% of your money out of your attorney because, like she said, you're going to be going around in circles. Our thing was we never trusted our attorneys because they never, like Ms. King was just being real. Look, man, you're not going to win this. I don't care what you do. We can go to trial for 7 years. You're going to lose. So
And let me tell you why I'm saying this. I want to make sure this is real clear. You can have what we call plea lawyers that'll talk to you 3 or 4 different times and ultimately tell you to plead. Because in the federal system, that's what they're going to do. Or you can have the lawyer that actually goes out and investigates everything, which is time-consuming, actually listens to the evidence, actually interviews people. If you say you have some alibi witnesses, and then they give you advice. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for people's time and their experience, and you got to listen.
Right. And so just ask around. You know, word of mouth is always the best form of advertisement. But mainly, you've got to get in that person's head and say, hey, listen, I did this. What can I do? What are my options? Or look, I didn't do it. How can we beat this case? You know, if I had it to do all over again, as soon as they indicted me, I'd be like, hey, look, what's the least amount of time I can get? I want to plead guilty today.
Because I did do this. I did sell them some dope.
I did something. I never sold crack. Let's get this straight.
Crack. So how can you get it to where it's what I did, the powder?
Right. And I'll tell you another thing I learned studying the law in prison. Now, yes, you do get reductions for snitching, but you get the same reduction for telling the truth about what you did. You get the same, it's like you telling on yourself, well, you are telling on yourself, but you get the same downward departure, if you will, for telling what happened. What we should have done.
That's the 5K.
Yes, what we should have done was told the truth. This is what we did. What's the least amount of time we can get? And what happened, what would have happened was they wouldn't have been able to stick this crack on us.
Right.
They wouldn't have been able to stick this leader organizer
Or
enhancement
if
on
they
us.
did because they were cheating and dirty cops, because some dirty cops will, but generally the prosecutor's not going to let them. If they don't have to go to trial on anybody in this conspiracy and everybody accepts responsibility for what they do, you can be punished for what you did.
Right.
But it's the game gets, the stakes get high when 2 people want to go to trial and the other 3 or 4 have played out.
Right.
So now they got to throw everything at you. And what they have on those 2 might be a little bit, so they're going to pump up the volume. So they're going to get, okay, what else can you say about them? Well, can you say this? Do you feel comfortable saying this? So they're going to write this script for you, because sometimes they don't like what actually happened. It might not sound convincing enough. It might not really be bad. So that's what they do. So if everybody accepts responsibility for what they do, most fair prosecutors will just let you take responsibility for what you do.
Yes.
Because they don't have to prepare for trial.
Exactly.
So they don't have to spend all that extra work, and they'll do that. But if they have to prepare for trial, they're going to say you did things that you didn't even do.
Right. And the best thing to do is to try to plead guilty and get all of the facts out. What hurt us was, and to the snitches' credit, it wasn't what they told. Most of what they told was true. It was how the prosecution twisted what they told.
That's what they do.
To benefit what they wanted to do to us,
where they
which
wanted
was
you to be.
severely punish us for having the gall to go to trial.
And remember, if you're some of my new viewers, prosecutors, in my experience, get rewarded for how much time they give people.
Yes.
So say, for example, if they would have, he got 235 months, his uncle got 360 months. So say, for example, after all this trial and all of that, the guidelines would have given them just 100 months. That prosecutor who got 100 months is not going to get promoted as fast as the one that got 235 months and 360 months. And that's an opposite way of the system. But the prosecutors who get the most punishment rise up the chain faster. And see, that's another factor that people are not thinking about.
Right.
And so you're dealing with a lot of factors once you get to trial, because now you're dealing with people's own personal ethics.
Right.
And am I going to try to just try him clean? We call that a clean trial. Just what happened.
Right.
Or are they going? I call it cheating. My clients say dirty. Are they going to get dirty? And so that's definitely another factor. And that's the hard thing to convince people, because man's desire is to be free. And people, even though they're doing wrong, they don't believe that the system's about to do them wrong. Is that true?
Lord have mercy.
They don't believe that the prosecutors, the cops, and they don't believe people will lie.
I don't know why.
I'm just saying, you didn't think so, did you? You didn't think the system was going to do you like it did you?
Oh, no. I didn't think the system could do me like it did.
That's what I'm saying. You think it's fair. You think
Right.
if I do get convicted, let me take a chance at it, because at least it'll just be for what I did.
Right.
Because the truth will come out.
And that's why I say we never trusted our attorneys. They never told us.
Are you sure they didn't tell you and you weren't listening?
Positive.
Are you
Because-
have another question before I hang up, ma'am? Oh, she might have hung up already. Okay.
I'm positive. Because, again, they would ask us questions like they would cross-examine or prosecuting us or something. Well, they're saying that you sold 22 keys. My response was, well, I'm saying that I didn't.
Right.
So what,
But I'm just saying, from a legal standpoint, like if you were working with me, they're telling me to wrap it up. But if you were working, we might have to continue this conversation if you can come back. All right, it's been good. And I've been told that I have to wrap this up. This is a good conversation. I'm going to see if Troy is available to come back another time. It doesn't have to be next week. And maybe we can talk about this some more, because the federal system is very interesting, and there's a lot more that we can say. So thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Please tune in next Wednesday, and please watch other shows on YouTube at YouTube user Vivian R. King. All together, no spaces, no commas, no dots. And remember, I'd like to tell your story. So if you have a story that you want to tell about the criminal justice system, please get in touch with me. When the credits go up, my phone number will be there. Or you can Google me. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with crime. This is a show where I